and the actual actions leading to a difference in people's lives, especially as it relates to pocketbook issues, affordability, and Canadians just finding it harder and harder to get ahead. And so I think if you listen to what Pierre Poilievre has to say...
Mark Carney says that inflation is down, confidence is sky high, jobs are up, which is really fascinating because none of that is actually true when you go into the greater detail of it all. We have a lot of reality checks, actually, for Liberal plans, and this one in particular slaps them right in the face. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, and comment your thoughts down below. Share this video as well. There was, and still is, so much noise from last night's vote. And the weird thing is seeing so many people fall hook, line, and sinker for the bait that was planted. So we are going to be discussing all of that, all of the controversy around it, and really kind of breaking that down. Oh, and by the way, the Liberals have a new insult for us. Yeah, who would have thunk? I know, crazy.
What was deplorable? You said it was deplorable en français. What was that? What was deplorable about last night?
Well, I mean, I you know, my perspective, but at a time where Canada is facing you know, Canada needs to meet the moment. That's what Canadians expect us. So I don't understand how some will explain to their own constituents how they would vote against things that province have been wanting, the labor movement have been wanting, businesses have been wanting, our military have been wanting. You know, when you talk about investing in infrastructure, that should really bring Canadians together. When you say investing in housing, that should bring Canadians together. Investing in productivity, that's something we've been talking for years. That should bring Canadians together. So we've tried in the budget to bring Canadians together to meet the moment. And obviously, I understand politics is part of this place, but I think in moments like that, there's a moment in our nation history where you need to elevate yourself from politics and say, let's do something for the country.
Just to clarify, he called anybody against the government deplorable. That was his words. That's what he was being questioned on. He refused to say in over 60 seconds what deplorable meant. He just went on to moral superiority. I'm a Liberal because I'm a good person. This budget is a good budget because it's a Liberal budget. And if you're against it, you're a bad person. Well, that's pretty stupid. The real answer, though, is definitely a little bit more politically inconvenient for him because he reframes voting against the budget as immoral, insinuating that anybody opposed to it, you know, hates infrastructure, housing, productivity, provinces, labor, business, the military, which is such a very classic tactic. I actually saw Ben Mulrooney say something about this in particular very recently, where he was saying how the Liberals keep kind of using this framework of you're either with us or you're against the whole country, which is ridiculous and very silly and simple. You can very much be in government and not have the best interest of your country at heart.
The Leader of the Opposition and his colleagues have an opportunity to vote for generational investment to build
Maybe it's a good day for him and his Brookfield buddies who are dodging their tax bills, but it's a terrible day for the Canadian people stuck paying record-high grocery bills. In fact, the Prime Minister said he'd be judged by prices at the grocery store. Today, Statistics Canada revealed that grocery price inflation is almost double the Bank of Canada's target, rising 40% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. The direct result of the Liberal industrial carbon tax on farmers, the food packaging tax, the fuel standard tax. The Prime Minister puts his budget on the national credit card. Does he expect Canadians to pay their groceries the same way?
Going back to François-Philippe Champagne's statement where he says, we're meeting the moment. I'm sorry, what moment have you literally ever met? Like actually ever?
Right, because I remember, I think it was the Prime Minister's first press conference after winning the election. He was asked, will you seek a supply and confidence agreement with the NDP? He said, no. And the follow-up was, why not? He said, why? It was very blunt there how he felt about it.
You know, there's a good reason why nobody's ever approached me to run for a political party, because I would give very bad strategy advice. But if it was me, I would tell the truth. I would say, you know what? The Prime Minister campaigned a certain way. He campaigned to be aggressive against the Americans, and he hasn't been. He's backpedaled. The Prime Minister has campaigned to bring about generational change. And he hasn't done that.
And right before we get into something that Mark Carney claimed yesterday during question period, I really want to just provide you with these facts, okay? This is data. This isn't a conspiracy. This is called public record, of which I have taken the time to go through on various occasions and pick apart on my own. So, you know, to say that this budget is going to be generational and so very good, first and foremost, actually, let's play this by CBC, because it's not.
The second thing is just by nature of this document. This budget document has no retail tax credits. There's nothing to actually run on. Usually when you want to go to an election, you write a budget that you're willing to either be defeated on and run or govern on. And I can tell you right now, there's very little in here, and it's not just me. For example, CFIB came out and said this is like a lost opportunity for tax credits for small businesses. There's nothing to put on a lawn sign in this budget.
So let's clarify a couple of stark realities here in Canada that the entire country should very much be paying attention to, of which this budget does absolutely nothing to address. Canada's productivity is down over the last 7 years in a row. We are the worst in the G7. In fact, while the budget, allegedly, with how Champagne describes it, it boosts productivity. Well, the PBO analysis says that Canada is actually going to continue to fall even further behind. In fact, in their own budget, it says that if we had simply kept pace with the United States, Canada, on average, Canadians would be $11,000 richer per person today from their own budget. So, okay, then. Canada also has the highest per capita deficits among the G20. So nothing about this incredible amount of spending is meeting the moment either.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer hasn't had a drink of the Liberal budget Kool-Aid. That's normal because it's his mandate to provide non-partisan analysis, and that's precisely why the Liberals want to replace him. They've issued a call for applications to find a permanent replacement who demonstrates, and I quote, tact and discretion. Tact and discretion, Mr. Speaker. They want a discreet PBO, Mr. Speaker, who will apologise for his words before speaking. They might as well ask him to join the Liberal Party. Are they going to do what they did with judges and recruit the next PBO from the Liberal Party?
And Canada has lost $49.5 billion in foreign investment since Mark Carney took office. StatsCan has confirmed this, and that number is certainly much higher now. I'm just going off of the last published report that I saw. It's also really important to note that net outflows in 2025, in the first half of it at least, with the data that we have, so that would be portfolio investments as well as foreign investors who are choosing to reduce their exposure to Canadian securities. Foreignly, that number is $22.6 billion in the first 2 quarters. That's gone. And in total, that number is $85.9 billion. Mark Carney and Brookfield Asset Management have also been doing this. There's also been a record high of divestment, the largest since the 2007 financial crisis, where foreign investors are actively and significantly reducing their holdings of Canadian bonds and equities and all of that sort of stuff. And before I just fact check the Liberals into oblivion on their comments here, I do want to also say that in 2024, we did have some good news, which is that for the first time in 10 years, our FDI, foreign direct investment, actually had a 36% increase from the previous year. $85.5 billion is what that was in 2024. However, the devilish details are that, and this was reported from the Fraser Institute, where they cautioned in April of 2025 that the federal government and provincial subsidies, particularly to the electric vehicle sector, were a significant factor for this increase. The report noted that this report may not be sustainable and emphasized the need for broader tax and regulatory reforms.
Again this month, just as it was last month, just as it has been every month when I've been Prime Minister, Canadian wages have grown faster than the rate of inflation. Canadians are getting ahead. We are creating jobs despite the attack on this economy by the Americans, despite by the obstruction of the opposition. This is an opportunity to build our country. The vote is today. Stand up and be counted.
And this is the devilish detail that they don't want you to know about. They don't want you to understand it. Carney and the Liberals keep bragging about inflation being down. But inflation didn't fall because the government fixed anything. Quite the opposite. It fell because the economy is slowing down so much that people can't afford to buy things anymore. So when fewer people are spending money, prices naturally cool. And inflation, if you want to use that as a starting point for why our economy is strong, well, that's just completely false, because all you have to do is look at the details to understand why. And I'll explain that to you here. In a strong economy, where there's, I'll call it good low inflation, that will happen when you see those numbers being pretty stable, because wages are rising, productivity is improving, businesses are investing, supply chains are very healthy, people can afford things. The cost of living is very manageable. You will see lower inflation in those situations because the economy is functioning quite well, quite stable. Bad low inflation, which is what Canada has, happens to a weak economy when people can't afford to buy things. Demand is collapsing. Businesses stop investing. They stop expanding. Consumers are cutting back. The economy is slowing. Unemployment is rising and investment is fleeing. The reason why prices stay stable is because nobody is spending. That's the situation in Canada right now. But the problem is that most Canadians will just hear that soundbite and they'll never, ever think to look into it, ever.
No one believes that. Absolutely no one believes it. I'm sure the Prime Minister doesn't believe it. After his election, he was also meant to re-establish the principle of free trade. Had he done so, he would not even have to claim that we have the best agreement with the States. Does he agree that his trade agreement strategy with the States has failed? The US president isn't even accepting his phone calls anymore.
And here is another reality check, a legitimate crisis that the Carney Liberals don't want to address. And honestly, I think it is truly laughable to hear them talk. I don't know if you've seen this in the news recently, but so Trump is kind of cracking down on some H-1B visas. So that's essentially immigrant visas if you work in particular industries, that sort of thing. And they've been saying in Canada that we are going to start recruiting all of that top talent in Canada. Yeah. It's weird that those people didn't choose Canada. They chose the United States, much like most investors in the world. And now we're going to be like, hey, we know that didn't work out for you because Donald Trump is cracking down on some of that. So just come on over here. Well, unfortunately, here's the reality of that.
The 5-year departure rate for immigrant healthcare workers is 36%. That's the same for scientists. The 5-year departure rate for experienced executives is 193% above average. Software developers, AI and cybersecurity professionals, managers in finance, engineering, architecture, the very people who can help Canada build the economy and infrastructure and housing of the future, all leave at above average rates. It will already be difficult to double our non-US trade volume, as the government has declared its intention to do. It gets that much harder when globally connected immigrants with global Rolodexes leave for competitor countries.
You know what I think would be really cool? If Canada would stop, I don't know, being so desperate, I guess. That's probably the best way that I can summarize that. Like, it's so frequent that we just react. We are constantly reacting instead of setting precedent, because we actually can't set precedent in the current situation that we are in. And the reason for that is bad policy. But liberals play this really bizarre emotional game to continue getting their way. And once you see through it, my gosh, you are never going to go a day in your life again where you don't see right through it. Where rather than address bad policy, they just resort to stuff like this.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, yeah, I know they don't really like seeing women in the workforce, but this long talk about...
It's always emotional. There's always an emotional hook. Us versus them. We're the good guys. You're the bad guys. Always. Rather than just address the actual problems here. We just want to distract everybody with all this noise so that we can keep doing what we do that's causing people to feel the way that they are.
Armed with spreadsheets and slogans and the dangerous belief that they know better than everyone else.
The Minister for Environment and Climate Change.
We're talking, Mr. Speaker, so I was sitting. I'm a liberal and a proud socialist, Mr. Speaker.
I'm a liberal and a proud socialist, Mr. Speaker. I'm a liberal and a proud socialist, Mr. Speaker.
And you look at this central planning, and it's everywhere. Here's just a few examples, but this video could be 20 minutes long. I promise you. The Major Projects Office? Well, it's supposed to fast-track selected projects. But because of all of the previous government's regulations that stop the projects from going ahead remain in place, the effect is that the government, not the market, chooses the winners and the losers. And by the way, most of these new projects that have already been announced, well, they've been going forward for almost a decade. This means that if you want your project approved, you need to focus on what the government wants. This is textbook industrial policy, a central authority deciding which multi-billion-dollar projects live or die.
And that in particular is the crux of why Canada is where it is when it comes to importing talent, when it comes to providing subsidies to convince and bribe businesses to operate here, and why that talent leaves and those businesses end up leaving too. That is the problem. And nobody wants to address that problem because Canada is not keeping any of this competition for many specific reasons, being high taxes, low wages relative to the cost of living, the housing disaster that now they're just going to centralize. They're going to take away, the private sector from being able to operate and build housing. Now the government's going to do it for you. That's a good thing. And then they're also going to take away your freedom of choice. You can't buy your dream home anymore. Here's a booklet of pre-modular homes that you can afford that we're going to build for you. That sounds freaking crazy, doesn't it? We have stagnant productivity. We have long wait times for credential recognitions. We have poor career advancement opportunities due to the structure and bureaucracy that we have in this country, and also the mass amount of people who are now in our country that we cannot sustain, that we have to support, who are eating our lunch, for lack of better words. And also just like very weak domestic industry clusters. Canada has had our economy destroyed by this model that the Liberal Party continues to sell. You know, Carney's entire pitch has been that exact same model. It's dressed up a little bit differently and enough to confuse you. His credentials that everybody talks about are enough to confuse you, but the reality is the exact same as it was before. And that is precisely why I'm completely okay with the fact that that budget got passed yesterday. I know there's a lot of controversy. I know there's a lot of anger, and I know that there is an awful lot of noise, but I will explain why this is the best thing that could have happened to us.
From the budget vote, what could this mean for that leadership review?
I don't think it's going to have much impact on the leadership review itself. That leadership review vote, just let's remind your viewers, is going to be Conservative Party members who were chosen as delegates at their electoral district association who travel to Calgary to be at the convention. So it's not going to be a referendum all Canadians vote on of should Pierre Poilievre lead the party. This is going to be Conservative members elected as delegates who go to the convention to cast a ballot on that. And so in that sense, I think Pierre Poilievre's leadership is entirely safe.
And for full transparency, because my gosh, do I ever get accused an awful lot of being a conservative shill paid by the party. You can go ahead and check their expense sheets on that one. It's all public record. I get accused of a lot of things because I'm an active participant in democracy and I am a conservative. But I am going to that convention. I'm very much looking forward to it and meeting a whole bunch of people that I haven't met before. However, I turned down every opportunity that came my way to go as a delegate, even though going as a delegate seems really cool. There's all sorts of different like meetings and stuff that you get to participate in, and it would have been incredibly informative, solely because I don't actually feel comfortable being tied to the party on paper in that way. So that's just my own personal decision there. I want to report on the news. I want to report on what makes sense. I don't want to have anywhere on my, about me section that I'm actually like a Conservative Party delegate. I'm not comfortable with that, but I will be covering it as media, and I will definitely be telling you all about it when I get back.
But I think what you are going to see is the kind of message track of where the divergence between Conservative policy and what they're talking about and what Mark Carney and Liberal policy is talking about. And there's definitely a gulf between the grand rhetoric and promises you hear from Prime Minister Carney and the actual actions leading to a difference in people's lives lives, especially as it relates to pocketbook issues, affordability, and Canadians just finding it harder and harder to get ahead. And so I think if you listen to what Pierre Poilievre has to say, if he's proactively getting to talk about issues he wants to, he's always talking about affordability and how that's impacting Canadians' pocketbook. And so I expect the Conservatives to stay focused on that message.
And my goodness, the noise after last night's budget vote. I never in a million years expected that Conservatives and everybody would band together to team up to defeat the Liberals in a non-confidence motion, because that would be incredibly stupid, for lack of better words. And I've been seeing this floating around from various people. And it's kind of annoying because it's just it's such short-term thinking. And I understand it. Having said that, I totally understand the anger and frustration. What do you mean? You're an opposition party. You're supposed to oppose. How on earth could you have some MPs kind of hiding so that maybe they'd abstain if the vote was getting a little too close because they wanted this budget to pass? You guys are so weak. You're cowards. This is proof of really bad leadership. No, it's not at all, actually. Politics is not protest. It's oftentimes chess, and that chess game can be incredibly frustrating. Triggering a Christmas election would have been the dumbest strategic move probably in decades that the Conservative Party could have done. It would have essentially guaranteed defeat. It would have essentially guaranteed a Liberal majority government. So if you're mad that the Conservatives didn't all band together to defeat the budget, a couple things to note here. Number one, what outcome do you want? Do you want a Liberal majority for 4 more years, where the press will then run an entire months-long campaign smearing the Conservatives for forcing you to go to the polls in the holidays, where the budget never gets properly scrutinized, where Carney avoids all of the consequences within it, where Liberals again get to run on fear instead of math and reality, and where the economic updates get buried? I don't think so. Number two, even if they had, the vote would have likely been in a tie. And as tradition, the Speaker of the House would have then voted in favor of the government, and the government would have passed the budget anyway, so it's kind of irrelevant. But to say that this is some proof of the Conservative uniparty, whatever the hell that is completely false. It's completely false, because this budget really was bait. And 2 abstentions wouldn't have changed the vote. It wouldn't have changed the outcome. It didn't change the game plan. It only changed the narrative for people who perhaps don't quite understand how Parliament works or the long-term strategy here, because the truth is that, yeah, the Liberals won the vote, and that's a really good thing for us. Why? Because they lost the advantage. Now, Mark Carney has to live with the consequences of his own numbers. He has to live with every broken promise that now belongs to him that he cannot escape from, with every missed target that lands in his lap, with every struggle of the cost of living, the economy, and the actual crisis we're in, which is not Donald Trump. That is all on him. Every single economic failure from here on out sticks. That's what this means. This is the long game, because you don't beat a collapsing government by saving it in a trap that they set for you. Every single month that Carney stays in power without making any of that deeply needed reform that the Conservatives want to make, the numbers will continue to get worse. Investment will continue to flee. Productivity will keep sliding. Debts will keep piling up. And Canadians will keep feeling squeezes in ways that no talking points will be able to spin away. So this budget wasn't a victory for the Liberals. This was a stalling tactic. This was an attempt at a delay and a hope that they could maybe be saved from Canadians being able to connect the dots back to them. The math doesn't lie, bills don't lie, and grocery receipts don't lie. And there is no prime minister that can outrun this economic reality 10 years in the making that is about to hit us so freaking hard, it's not even funny. So at the end of the day, is it frustrating? Yes. Do we all have to suffer? Yes. That sucks. But the vision of there being a light at the end of the tunnel is so much closer than I think any of us could possibly realize by this result. And in 8 months from now or something, if we can just band together and suck it up and keep talking, keep educating people for another 8 months, maybe even for another year, when that next one comes around and then the government will fall, we could be looking at a Conservative majority or a Conservative minority that's so big that they can actually push through their agenda. I'm Jasmine Lane. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, like, follow. I'd love to know your thoughts down below as well. If you want to comment on this video, share it. And a friendly reminder that I am on Substack, where I post things that don't make it here on YouTube. If you want to check that out, the link is in the description of this video, and I will talk to you tomorrow.